Castellana 6 Roundviv Il-7. Leon Nagant and his brother Emil were well known in the Russian Tsar's court and military administration because they played a part in designing the Russian service rifle, the Mosin Nagant Model 1891. The Nagant Model 1895 was adopted as the standard issue sidearm of the Russian Imperial Army, police force and police officers, where it replaced the earlier Smith & Wesson models. Production initially began in Liège, Belgium. However, Russia purchased the manufacturing rights in 1898 and moved the production to Tula arsenals in Russia, and soon they were producing at least 20,000 Nagant revolvers per year. Revolvers typically have a small gap, sometimes called a flash gap, between the cylinder and the barrel to allow the cylinder to revolve. The bullet must jump this gap when fired, which has the adverse effect on accuracy, especially if the barrel and chamber are misaligned. The gap also is the path to escape the high pressure temperatures and gases. Expensive revolvers such as the Kurt and the Manudin had a hand fitted to keep the gases to a minimum. Mass-produced revolvers may have the gap as large as 0.25mm. The Model 1895, by contrast, had a mechanism where the hammer is cocked. First turn the cylinder and more forward, closing the gaps between the cylinder and the barrel. The cartridge, also unique, plays an important part in sealing the gun to the escape of the propellant gases. The bullet is deeply seated entirely within the cartridge case, and the case is slightly reduced in diameter at its mouth. The barrel features a short Cornell section at its rear. This attempts to mouth through the cartridge. The barrel features a short Cornell section at its rear. This attempts to mouth through the cartridge, completing the gas seal. By sealing the gap, the velocity of the bullet is increased by 15 or 45 millimeters per second. So that's about 50 to 150 feet that the bullet could go. This feature also eliminates the possibility of injury from gases escaping through the gap, which can damage a finger if the user holds the gun with the finger positioned behind the gap. The disadvantages of this design is that the Nagant revolver was laborious and time consuming to reload, with the need to manually eject each cartridge that was spent and reload one cartridge at a time through the loading gate. At the time the revolver was designed, this system was obsolete. In England, the Webley revolver was a break action and simultaneously ejected all 6 spent cartridges, and in America, the swinging crane and the start ejector was replaced the loading gate and the ejector rod system. However, the Nagant design did have its advantages of requiring the less mechanism and less manufacturing time than more modern designs. The Nagant Model 1895 was made in both single action and double action models before and during World War I. They were known as the Private's models and the Officer models, respectively. Production on the single action models seemed to have stopped after 1918, with some exceptions including the examples of target competitions. Single action revolvers were later converted to double action revolvers, making the original single action revolvers rather rare. The Model 1895 was also extensively used by the Russian Imperial Army and later by the Soviet Union after the Russian Civil War and Revolution. In Russian service, it is well known for the extreme sturdiness and the ability to withstand abuse. One of the former Russian Imperial officers had to say this: "If anything went wrong with the Model 1895, it could be fixed with a hammer." It was widely employed and used by the Bolshevik secret police, the Cheka, as well as its Soviet successor agencies such as the OGPU and the NKVD. 7 Nagant revolvers were used by the communist revolutionaries to murder the Imperial Russian family and their servants in July 1918. As I said, it was used by the police, so in its police role it was frequently seen as a cut-down barrel to aid the clemation of the panicloth agents within the gun. Despite the advent of more modern pistols like the TTT-33, the Model 1895 remained in production and used throughout World War II. The Nagant seal firing system meant that the Nagant revolver was not like any other revolver. Unlike most revolvers, it had the effective soundproof suppressors, and suppressors could even be mounted onto it. Suppressed Model 1895 revolvers, modified in the Changli's workshops, also turned up in the hands of the Viet Cong guerrillas during the Vietnam War as assassination weapons. There's also an example of a suppressed Mosin Nagant revolver in the CIA Museum in Langley, Virginia, USA. Until 1918, it was produced in 2 versions, a double-action version for officers and a cheaper single-action version for the ranks. It continues to be used in the Russian Revolution by the Red Army and the Soviet Union forces. The distinctive shape and the name helped it to achieve cult status in Russia in the early 1930s. The presentation for the Nagant Model 1895 revolver with an embossed red star is one of the greatest honors that could be bestowed on a party member. The common Russian name for the revolver, Nagant, became synonymous with the concept of the revolver in general, and it has been employed in such weapons regardless of the actual make or model. As early as 1933, the model 1895 has started to be replaced by the Tekharov semi-automatic pistol and had been nearly replaced by the Makarov pistol in 1952. It was still produced and used in great numbers during World War II, and it remained in use with the Russian Railway, Postal Service, and even some remote police forces in Russia for many years. In the Russian Federation, it was only retired from use of the Postal Service in 2003 and from Bafit Security Service in 2009. And that is the story of the Nagant Revolver. And now we do the classic, names of who actually used it. This is actually pre-recorded. No, this is actually recorded after the fact. And as up to late as 2009, the Nagant Revolver was still being used in security services around Russia and the Postal Security Service. So let's take a look at our signature series, whatever you like to call it, who actually used the gun, of course, during these. Starting off the list strong again, of course we'll do why they're there. So starting off the list strong again, Afghanistan, Soviet puppet, and they tried to invade Afghanistan in the 1970s. Albania, that's a weird one, but probably Eastern Bloc or probably from World War II. East Germany, Soviet satellite. Democratic Republic of Georgia, this is the 1918s Republic of Georgia, so that would make sense. Syria, by the Syrian Army and Special Police Forces, so that's the Syrian civil war going on now. Belgium, of course, Leon Nagant, half of the Nagant Revolver. Actually, the whole Nagant Revolver this time. We have Brazil. I don't know how that's going to get there, but probably. I don't think it was a Soviet ally in the Cold War, but probably during World War II or something like that. Probably just bought it off of post-Soviet war era, Russia. Burundi, probably Soviet African ally. Probably a Soviet state in Africa before it turned capitalist again. Finland, of course, during the Winter War, World War II, and half of their Soviet occupation, so that makes sense a bit. Also, Finland was the part of the Russian Empire, so that could be an imperialist weapon, the weapon captured during the Winter War, and of course, probably bought off of Russia today. France, I don't know why they would be lending out to France, honestly. Probably during World War II because everyone's short on arms, but Russia was the most short on arms, so I don't know how that one got there. India, probably post-war Russia again. Japan during the World War II, during Manchuria and all that kind of stuff. Kyrgyzstan, at least up to 1996, used by security guards, and of course a Soviet satellite state within the Iron Curtain. Kenya, probably a African Soviet state that turned communist again. Laos, part of Vietnam. Nazi Germany, actually by Nazi Germany, like other foreign weapons captured by the Polish, the Nagant Revolver was used as the designated Revolver 6.12. Of course, we have they were used by the Home Front Forces. I can't remember what do you call it? It escapes my mind right now, but the Van der Faust and the Iron Stone flamethrower was designed for them. The Volkstroms, the Home Front Guard, the last-ditch Nazi effort to employ all its citizens to the front. Nepal, probably during their communist uprising. Norway, can't really see that, but probably Lend-Lease aid during World War II. Oh yeah, Lend-Lease aid. But when you go to France, it just says France, it doesn't say Free France. Because remember, this is actually going through all the countries that exist, and existing today. So if it would have said Free France, it would have kind of made sense, Lend-Lease, but it says France, so probably World War II, World War One, who knows. Of course, Poland used to be a Russian subjugated thing, it was split 3 ways. I did an episode on that, plug, shameless promotion. Anyway, Russian Empire, and it was actually, Russian Empire, sorry, not Russia. Russian Empire since May 1895, of course. Russia is actually still using it up until 1998, and even up to 2009 it is still being used by security guards. Qatar, probably Middle Eastern ally, but could be brought off of when they say Qatar, I don't know if it's a Cold Ally thing. I don't really know all the Cold Allies, the Cold War allies, so forgive me. Somalia was a Cold War ally. It was going back and forth between capitalists and communists, but it could have gotten arms from both. He was trying to play up both of the sides to get money and weapons. So yeah, that's how African dictators roll. South Africa, that's a weird one, but they were kind of seen as communist and isolated, especially with the apartheid Africa. So Nelson Mandela was actually trying to nationalize a lot of businesses and stuff like that in South Africa, so it was kind of seen as communist. So I would kind of see where that is going, but South Africa could have probably brought it off post USSR Russia. The Soviet Union, of course, the Second Spanish Republic, you know, the Spanish Civil War, South Korea, I don't know how that's going to get there. Probably, Korean Civil War, or maybe even the Japanese actually gave some of them during the Imperial Japanese rule. But either way, it would have found its hand in South Korea. Of course, North Korea, I don't actually see it on this list. Then again, they're kind of running around with the AKs and stuff like that, so I don't actually see them on the list. So that's a weird one. South Korea, but no North Korea. That's an interesting one. Soviet Union, Second Spanish Republic, yeah, Sweden. I don't know too much about Sweden, probably Lend-Lease during World War II. Tanzania, of course, that was the country I had to Google the other night when we did Limos in Nagant. Cold War ally. Thailand, captured off of Vietnamese, maybe. Or even the communists that were in Thailand at the time. United Kingdom, more than likely Lend-Lease during both World Wars. Vietnam, of course, Kingdom of Greece, and of course Kingdom of Greece means either World War I or World War II, mostly the Greek partisans in the Greek mountains maybe. And Ukraine, of course, part of Russia and USSR, and is even being used by some railway security guards. Sorry. And of course the Philippines, of course the Philippine Revolution, the Philippine-American-Mexican War, not the Philippine-American War, and even being used by some revolutionary guerrillas such as Antonio Lula, which actually General Renard, if you watch the Belgium episode, actually trained Antonio Lula, as well as the King of Belgium himself, King Albert I. And of course it was used by the Hachbongbe Lingua Saihamo, which is I think the Philippines insurrection, maybe. Yeah, the Philippine insurrection, mostly against anti-Japanese army, but also it was a communist group, so it would find the hands of there, and also being found by the Viet Congs, especially the suppressed Nagant Revolver. And that is it. That's all the weapons I have for you today. Hope you learned something. I didn't see North Korea, that's a weird one, but who knows. Anyway, hope you learned something. I'm gonna edit this now. We do Belarus tomorrow, and finally we do Tannenberg on Friday. Still gotta get some Tannenberg footage, but I will get it. It might be day, night, and snowy, maybe, but we'll see. Anyway, hope you learned something. Gotta edit this video, 25 minutes, not too bad. Learn something. See you later.